Hey everybody, it's me Ashish, and before we begin, I just want to give a quick thank you to everybody listening, watching, and supporting the podcast. It means the world to us, and we're so appreciative. I just want to let you guys know that you guys can always ask us questions, give us segment ideas, and keep up with the fun, all at AshishandFriends.com. We're on Twitter at AshishandPals, we're on Instagram at AshishandFriends, and hey, we're even on Facebook, facebook.com/AshishandFriendsPod. If you're watching this video, please go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to the channel. All that following and liking and subscribing will help us grow and keep going, so we appreciate it so much. And once again, thank you, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Yes, welcome to another great episode of the Ashish and Friends podcast. With the NFL coming up in a couple of days, we're going to be discussing the AFC conference. We've got quite a fun divisions to talk about. So obviously we did the NFC last week. So if you haven't checked that out, please check it out. Today, we're just going to focus on the AFC teams. And without further ado, let's get started. As always, I'm your host, Ashish Airy. You can catch me on Instagram and on Twitter at Ashish Airy. I'm joined by my longtime friends. We've got Dev at Superlaser, and we've got Shahan at Shahan Jayaraja. So let's kick it off with the AFC South. Shahan, how's that looking for us this year?
Yeah, I think that the AFC South is looking like one of the more interesting divisions in the NFL. Now, not the best, just one of the most interesting. Let's go through it alphabetically, okay, and then we can rank at the end. So let's start with the Indianapolis Colts. The Indianapolis Colts, obviously, they have a new guy that you might have heard of by the name of Phillip Rivers, now potentially starting at quarterback. He's going to step in, obviously try to revitalize that passing offense, which was perfectly okay under Jacoby Brissett. And then in the running game, the Colts also added Jonathan Taylor to pair with Marlon Mack, along with that fantastic offensive line. Defensively, kind of about the same as years prior. But when I look at this team, I think that it's a team that probably will get better just because of the passing game coming in. You add Michael Pittman to the mix at wide receiver next to T.Y. Hilton. I see this team potentially being a little bit better this year, even if not necessarily game-changingly better.
Yeah, and this is another one of those teams where Jacoby Brissett's still on the roster. I think that if Phillip Rivers gets hurt, they still expect to win games. So I think there were with a lot of teams, and especially with older quarterbacks, you really worry what might happen. There's no concern here. If Phillip Rivers misses a few games, they should still be able to be competitive in those games.
Right. Obviously, he still knows the system. I'm interested to see if Phillip Rivers still has it. With a better offensive line, obviously a lot of running backs besides, like you mentioned, Mack, and they brought in Jonathan Taylor. They also have Naheem Hines out there, right? Who's a great pass catcher. Along with the other weapons you mentioned, they also have Zach Pascal and Paris Campbell. So let's see what he can work with, right? He has a lot of weapons there. Hopefully his arm's still there, and I think it'll be very fun to watch. Like you mentioned, the defense is actually one of the best I've seen, at least on paper. Their linebackers play really well, but these past few years, they've really invested so much in their secondary as well. So that'll be fun to see for sure.
So moving on, we're going to move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Look, we'll get to the standings at the end. Obviously, the Jacksonville Jaguars will be fourth in this. They're going to be a team that is potentially going to be competing, for a top 5 pick next year. But, the thing is, when I look at this roster, they have a lot of young talent. Like, they have a lot of young guys that could potentially be really good down the line. Clavon Chason is one of those guys. Obviously, they've still got Miles Jack on the roster. They've got, obviously, Gardner Minshew, who showed a lot of stuff in his first couple seasons. I just look at this roster, and I see a team that is in a couple years potentially going to be pretty special. A lot of guys who are first year, second year, third year players who I think could be big time down the road. But yeah, this is just obviously such a young team. It's a rebuilding team. They still don't necessarily know whether Gardner Minshew is a quarterback of the future. This gives them kind of a whole year to really get to try that out, see how it feels, see whether they're ready for that. But, I look at this team and I do see one that obviously still is in rebuilding mode.
Right. And you kind of alluded at it. When you're a rebuilding team or even a tanking team, the most important thing for you to do is figure out what you have and what you don't have. That's the most important thing. If Jacksonville can just walk away knowing who on the roster can play, at the end of this year, they will be in so much of a better spot. That's really their main goal for the year. Is Gardner Minshew the future? Are a lot of these younger receivers, younger linemen, are they the future? You just gotta find out.
I love this wide receiver core for them. I mean, I really do. DJ Chark is a really good player.
Yeah.
Laviska Shenault, who they just drafted from Colorado, was a tremendous receiver at the college level. If he had played for a bigger time program, I think that people might have noticed him a bit more. And I have to point out, went to DeSoto High School, so Texas boy. And then on top of that, you got D.D. Westbrook, who obviously we saw what he could do at Oklahoma. So I really like this wide receiver unit. I believe they had a Tyler Eifert too. So they've got a lot of weapons over there. So look, like you said, I mean, this is going to be a chance for them to figure out if Minshew can kind of be that kind of player. And because he has the weapons around him in the passing game. Now, in the running game, obviously, they cut Leonard Fournette. They kind of have some guys that they feel okay about there, but I don't necessarily see any of them as being a star player. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how they sort of go about trying to figure that out.
And I think that's part of it, right? Leonard Fournette wasn't part of their future with how much he was making. It just didn't make sense. They need to figure out what they have.
Yeah, they're very high on James Robinson is the word, but that's a lot to ask of a really young kid.
That's totally true. Like you've heard Robinson lately. Zigbo's been mentioned. They brought in Chris Thompson. Reichwell Armstead's been the favorite, until the past few days. So let's see what they've got back there. Like you mentioned, they have some really nice young players. Let's see what they can do. When I was looking at additions and subtractions, I mentioned Shenault and Chris Thompson to the offense. The subtractions was basically the whole defense. And it's crazy because just 2-3 years ago, they're in the AFC championship game against the Patriots. They traded away AJ Boye. They traded away Jalen Ramsey. They traded away Yannick Ngakoue just this this past year. So definitely, I think they're probably 2 years away from really contending. But they can probably draft their future QB if Gardner's not the answer.
And, on that defensive end, I mean, I really like Shaq Quarterman. He's going to be a guy who I think that people are going to get to know really quickly. Josh Allen, showed a little bit last year, but I think that he's poised for another big year from them. The other guy who I wanted to mention was, sorry, I'm scrolling down. I've forgotten C.J. Henderson. C.J. Henderson was a defensive back at Florida. Florida has a tremendous defensive back tradition, and I think he's the type of guy who's going to be the starter in this league for a long time. And all those guys that I just mentioned are either first or second year players, right? So they have something building there. Another guy for us from the state of Texas, Dakota Allen, who was featured on Last Chance U. So, I mean, they've got some guys for sure who I think that down the road will be big time playmakers, but you can't win a Super Bowl with 23-year-olds.
Right. Yeah, actually, I think the fun fact is they didn't cut a single undrafted free agent or any of their draft picks this year because, like you said, they're totally rebuilding. They need those young players to see what they can bring. But yep, let's see what happens with them.
Okay, well let's move on. So next up we've got the Houston Texans. So we got some interesting stuff going on here. Obviously, starting with hey, you remember that All-Pro Hall of Fame wide receiver they've got? Well, they turned him into David Johnson. So good for them. So look, I think that David Johnson can still be a good player, right? If he's healthy, but I mean. We had this conversation when we did our wide receiver rankings. To me, Hopkins was the best wide receiver in the league. And you had a guy who was, 25, 26, who you paired up with a quarterback who's obviously 23, 24. This could have been the next 10 years of your franchise. But instead, they decided that they'd rather, have an aged running back, I guess. And so, I mean, things aren't dire by any means at that wide receiver position. But, I mean, it went from being a pretty good group to an average to slightly below average group. Defensively, we know what they have there. I think they could have really used a guy who we're going to talk about very soon. And there was some talk about them bringing back. But I just look at this team and I don't see a team that's better than last year, right? I see them kind of being the same, if not a little bit worse after losing a guy like Hopkins. And yeah, I mean, there's been lots of talk, obviously, about GM Bill O'Brien and maybe how he probably shouldn't still be GM Bill O'Brien. But the one good thing that you tell them is that Deshaun Watson was just signed to a huge contract extension. He's going to be around for a long time. So if nothing else, that's something for Houston fans to be excited about.
Yeah, you're right. I don't think they made any significant additions to the defense. On offense, obviously they did lose D-Hop. That sucks for them. I feel bad for Watson, but I think they did a good job surrounding bolstering him by getting Randall Cobb in for, as a slot player. They did get Brandon Cooks as well. So, I mean, obviously you lose something with losing DeAndre Hopkins, but they did a good job. So now let's see if Will Fuller can actually stay healthy the full year, because I think this guy is a beast. Whenever he is healthy, he does amazing things, but he can't stay healthy. So hopefully he can this year. Let's see what they can do on offense. But you're right. I think overall, not much has changed from last year. And if anything, they did get a little worse.
The thing that I will say, though, is that I do expect for their offensive line to take another step forward. Especially, I mean, Titus Howard's going to be back healthy. He showed a lot during his first season from Alabama State. Laramie Tunsil obviously did shore up that left tackle position. So the bookends are really good. That interior line is still a little bit of a question mark. But, hopefully they can protect Deshaun Watson better. And I think that we all agree, if they can protect him at a high level, and if somebody can emerge from that wide receiver group and be like a legit number one receiver, which I don't see. I don't see any of these guys as being a real number one receiver. But if somebody can emerge from that group, there's obviously plenty of opportunity for Watson to get his name in the top 5 conversation. But it's going to take a lot of development from those receivers.
Yeah, and I fully expect even top 5 quarterbacks are going to have 8-8 seasons. And that's kind of what I expect from this team. I do expect them to take a step back. I don't think they're going to win the division this year. I just expect a good team that's carried by, not necessarily carried, because I do think, like you said, the offensive line is good. But Watson is going to play well. And the defense that was okay last year, they just got 1 year older. That was the only changes that were made, basically.
Yeah, and let's see what they do. Like Sean mentioned, David Johnson fell off the earth for some reason, last year, but this guy has talent, right? So if you can put it back together, I think he's an upgrade over Carlos Hyde, who still got 1,000 yards last year. The issue is, for me, is their weapons. They did surround him with decent weapons. Brandon Cooks, Cobb, Fuller, 3 people that are always injured every season. So hopefully they can stay healthy. And I think if they do, then good things could happen.
And David Johnson is active in the pass game. So at least if you're going to want a running back for your young quarterback, that's the style you're going to want. So it could work, but that's another person who's often injured.
Yeah. When I look at this wide receiver core, right, I look at it and I'm like, that's some nice weapons. If they could get a number 1 guy, that would feel good. But they just traded their number 1 guy for an injured running back. So I don't know, man. I just look at this offense and I'm like, man, they could really use a player like DeAndre Hopkins. And I mean, again, and I do think, numbers, when you have a quarterback as good as Deshaun Watson, numbers can be more important than just having that star guy. But look, I mean, once you get past those top 3, who all 3 are really good. I mean, you're talking Kenny Stills, who's a good player, not a great player. You're talking Kiki Kuti, who's been a great returner, but not necessarily a good receiver as yet. It's just a little shallow. And I'll tell you what, for a team that plays in the state of Texas, I think having this level of receiver talent, it's not good enough.
Totally agree with that statement. But let's see what they can do. I'm wishing the best for Watson. He's definitely fun to play. So hopefully they can, pull some miracles and get into the playoffs.
So moving on, we're going to finish off with the Tennessee Titans. Everybody knows, obviously, what the Tennessee Titans accomplished at the end of last year. Went on a crazy run. All of a sudden, Ryan Tannehill became the best quarterback in the league for God knows what reason. And now you come back this year. They add Jadeveon Clowney to the mix on defense, to a defense that was already awesome. And then on offense, you get a full year, obviously, of Derrick Henry post-beast mode or whatever the hell is going on. You get a full year of Ryan Tannehill where you kind of get to figure out what you have there. A.J. Brown and Corey Davis, I think, is a fantastic top 2 receiving core. I just look at this team, man, and I just see a team that still has opportunities let me rephrase it. They still need to prove themselves at places on offense. They need to prove that this Derrick Henry thing is real. They need to prove that Ryan Tannehill can be a full season quarterback. But, man, that defense is scary. That offense has a lot of weapons. And if things go right, I mean, I think this could potentially be a special team.
Totally agree. They didn't need Clowney, as you mentioned. They're coached by Mike Vrabel, who was his coach in Houston. So that's why he really enjoyed, reuniting with him. He had his best season under Coach Vrabel. That's a hard name to say, Coach V. But yeah, I think the biggest subtraction here is Jack Conklin that's missing, who was their starting tackle. Yeah, Luan's back. Conklin's out, though, but he's one of the best tackles. So I just kind of want to see if that affects, the running game or the passing game. But let's be real. We've talked about this. I think AJ Brown's like on the verge of the top 12, top 15 wide receiver. This guy is a monster. He had an incredible rookie year, which is hard to do for wide receivers. So, I'm expecting big things in his sophomore year. Like you mentioned, there's some other weapons out there. They have Adam Humphries in the slot as well. This guy had a really good season with the Tampa Bay Bucks like 2-3 years ago. So let's see if he can pick that up. But I think this team's going to be really fun to watch. And as you mentioned, their defense is pretty stacked. I think they have one of the best secondaries in the league right now. And I think their pass rush is fantastic as well.
Right. I agree. When I look at the Tennessee Titans, I see a team last year. I think a lot of us initially felt this might have been a fluke. Like, why did they do so well? What is going on with Ryan Tannehill? I think that they have set themselves up the best they possibly could to prove us wrong, right? To prove anyone who said it was a fluke wrong. They have the best chance to prove it wasn't. And I hope they do.
Yeah,
awesome.
and the one thing that I'll say is that I would have felt a whole lot better about this team if Isaiah Wilson wasn't on the COVID list right now. He was a tremendous tackle when he was at Georgia. He potentially could have stepped in and filled Jack Conklin's role and been a really good player. They still have good pieces there, right? Like, they're not going to be a bad offensive line, but that is definitely something that I will be keeping an eye on as the season goes along.
Yeah, and along with their passing weapons, Jonnu Smith, I've heard some really great things about him. He did pretty decent last year, so let's see if he can like take it up a next level. And like Dev mentioned, last year they did amazing, more than anyone could expect. So let's see if it is a real thing or if it's a fake thing. But if they can keep it up, I think it's going to be a very fun team to watch for sure.
So finishing it off with this, so ranking the division. So in fourth place, I think that we can all agree, we've got the Jacksonville Jaguars. This third to second place one, I think, is really hard. So with Jacksonville, let's say that they win about 4 games, right? Like, I think that they're going to be kind of in that range. Lots of flashes, potentially upset somebody, but still very young. Third, I will go with the Colts. So the Colts, again, they bring in Phillip Rivers. They still have a great offensive line. They still have a lot of weapons. But I think that the Texans, they obviously do have the best quarterback in the division. I still think that they're going to be able to find a way to win some games. And I have the Tennessee Titans winning the AFC South.
Okay, so I took a much different approach to the NFC South. So I have Jacksonville winning 3 games, which is right in that range. I think it could be 4, 2, maybe even 5. Like, it's somewhere in that range. I actually have the Texans third in the division. I have them going 8-8, which I guess I alluded to earlier. And then I have the Tennessee Titans going 9-7, and the Colts also going 9-7. But the Colts I will pick as my division winner. And I do think both teams could make the playoffs this year. So those would be I think that there's 3 teams who realistically can make the playoffs. But I would definitely, I'm not counting out the Colts or the Titans.
I'm right there with you, Dev. I've got the Jags with 4 and fourth with 4 wins. I put the Texans 8-8. They could, like I said, if they get it together, everyone's healthy, maybe the playoffs and that push for 1 or 2 in seeds. But then I've got right along with you. I've got the Colts, winning 9-7, and I got the Titans winning 10-6. I think between them two, it'll be really close. I think the addition of Clowney kind of changed my mind. I was initially with the Colts, but I think the addition of Clowney on the defense and seeing AJ Brown, in his sophomore year could really help the Titans.
Awesome. What should we want to do next?
You know what? Let's go from like one of the more, playoff contending teams to probably like a division that's probably not contending that much. Let's go to the AFC East. So we got a lot of teams here. We got New York Jets, Miami Dolphins, New England Patriots, Buffalo Bills. So I think between this year and last year, this division's changed the most of anyone. So let's start off with the New York Jets. They lost Robbie Anderson, whoop-de-doo, and they lost Jamal Adams, clearly. And, the face of the defense is not there anymore. Let's see what they can do. I don't like this team at all because I don't trust Adam Gase a single bit. I've studied him like so much in Miami Dolphins because I thought he was going to do good things. He just really screwed that team over. How he got a new head coaching job, I really don't know. But they lost those 2 players. My question is Gase going to do something this year? If not, it's time to let him go. Le'Veon Bell's been looking really good. Is he going to get a chance? Maybe. Let's see what the offense does. The defense, they have some nice names. They have Quinnen Williams, which is like a fun dude. Like, I really love that guy. They're coached by Greg Williams as a defensive coordinator. His history, so I'm sure they'll be a pretty good defense for some reasons. But I'm not looking forward to too much of this team, but let's see what happens. I think they're probably going to be the worst team in this division.
Yeah, I would say that I think that Sam Darnold has upside. I think that he can be a good player. I don't know if we're necessarily going to see it on a team like this. I will say I am very excited to see Denzel Mims probably get like 200 targets because Lord knows that they just need the offensive weapons on that team. But yeah, I mean, it's just there's some guys, but it's just a bunch of guys. Like this is probably going to be one of the worst teams in football.
Yeah, I agree. I think I probably have a little bit more faith in Sam Darnold than you guys do. I do think he's probably going to have a good year this year. I think they're probably going to be one of those teams that's looking at Sam Darnold next year where they're like, okay, he's good, but we really need to get help. So they're going to have to make some tough decisions coming up here, especially because you're getting later and later. His rookie contract's getting shorter. Right, you're gonna have to figure out, is he the guy long term or not? I think he is for the Jets. I also think they're gonna be bad.
Yeah, it's for me. I think he's a good player too. It's not like I don't have confidence in him. Yeah. I just don't have confidence in Gase and how he's running the organization. Like you mentioned, they brought in Denzel Mims, who's a nice deep threat target, which they really need because they were like, I don't know, bottom 5, as I mentioned earlier in a previous episode. But yeah, I just think there's a lot of moving parts and not a lot of trust going on with the coach and the team. So definitely not looking forward to this team at all. And hopefully Darnold isn't seeing ghosts this season. That I think that really help him out.
To me, Darnold is just I think Darnold is the most important thing the Jets need to figure out this year. And I would say a successful season for them is if Darnold looks good and they maybe get to 7 wins. If they that would be the best case. Realistically, I think that they're more, in that 5-6 area.
No, the only thing that I'll say that the most interesting thing that's going to happen is watching Mekhi Becton play. He's 6'8", 364 pounds, and runs a 5'1". So
yeah,
when Sam Darnold throws another pick six, you can see him flying down the field trying to.
That's for sure. I did put that they have an improved offensive line, so let's see what happens. But let's move on to another fun team. I think, the actual fun team. I think the Miami Dolphins. Man, whoo! Talk about tanking the right way, right? They tried so hard tanking last season and still won 5 games. Like, I'm interested in seeing what this team does. Obviously, Fitzmagic is starting the season, but I'm sure they'll bring Tua along at some point. I think this offseason they brought in some running backs. They brought in Jordan Howard, Matt Breida. They upped their defense some more. They brought in Byron Jones, Shaq Lawson from Buffalo, and they really did some good things and added Austin Jackson to their as their left tackle. I think with this team, you're just looking. Do they take that next step this year, or is it going to take them another year to kind of, see what's happening with the team? Because, they've got Devontae Parker there. They've got Mike Gesicki there. They've got Preston Williams, who was really, really good last year. I feel like they have enough weapons out there, and it's just kind of like seeing when will they bring Tua along and to see what he does. But I think this team's going to be really fun. I think they'll definitely be better than the Jets, but we'll see.
Yeah, this is another team that's really interesting because they finished the year so strong last year, and it's like if they can carry that over, this could be a really interesting team. And they did announce they're starting Fitzpatrick for now, right? How long is he gonna be starting? What is it gonna look like? I think we might see a full year of Fitzpatrick if they become like an 8-8-ish team. So it'll be really this is definitely the most exciting team to me, or the second most exciting team in this division.
Yeah, and I think, I think that this is a team that is obviously very well coached. I think that we saw that last year, and I think that it's a team that, yes, I do think that they're not going to pull Fitzpatrick if he's playing well, but I do think that there's a chance that even if the defense starts playing well, if some of the offensive pieces start playing well, I think they could get Tua in there. I don't think that they want him to have to play savior per se. You know,
Yeah.
I think that they want to. I think they want to be able to bring him around, along with sort of reasonable expectations. And I mean, look, everybody who watches college football saw what Tua can do at that level. And this isn't an Alabama receiving core, but they do have some good pieces for sure. And look, I think that regardless of what happens this year, they know that Tua is their guy of the future. And that's one of the nice things about having a guy like Fitzpatrick is like, you don't have to lie to yourself that like, you know, for the next 10 years, he's going to be your starting quarterback. He can just be a transition piece, right? And so, no, I mean, I'm really optimistic about this team long term. I think that one of the keys, too, is that they got to make sure at the beginning of the season that they have the ability to protect a quarterback. But, you know, if they're blocking at a high level, if they're protecting at a high level, you know, I mean, I think that they should try to get to in there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't thought about that. Maybe if they're playing well and their lines are playing well, they may just be like, let's get two in. Let's figure out what we've got.
Even just give them some drives. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
you don't have to necessarily like pull Fitzpatrick and make sort of a big show of it until you know. But like, I mean, I think that at this point, I mean, you know, they're not fighting for a Super Bowl right now. They're not fighting for a draft pick right now. You kind of just have the ability to kind of just go along at your pace.
You think we could see like a fourth quarter to where it's like, okay, the game's out of reach. Let's just bring him in for a drive.
That's what I'd do. I mean, that's what
Yeah.
I'd do. I think that I'd try to, you know, put him in some good situations. I wouldn't even be opposed to having him like start a second half at some point. And it just depends, obviously. You don't want to give him too much. You have to, you know, managing quarterbacks at the NFL level is very difficult, obviously. But again, Ryan Fitzpatrick knows the deal, right?
Yeah.
Like there's no lie about, that he thinks that like this is his team and, you know, anything like that, right? And that's one of the good parts is that, you know, he's been a good teammate historically. So, I mean, I think that they have an opportunity to potentially try to bring Tua along slowly, and I'm hopeful that it works out.
For sure. Fitzmagic, you know, an NFL journeyman, or, you know, he's always bouncing from number one QB to QB2. I think he'll be okay with it. Let's see what happens there. You know, we talk about Bill Belichick and his coaching tree, how it usually doesn't work out. In year one, Brian Flores looks like it's working out. Let's see how it works in year two. But let's jump to the Bill Belichick tree. Let's go to Bill Belichick himself. Let's talk about the New England Patriots. Obviously, the end of a dynasty. Brady's out of New England. Oh, so sad. You know, I feel bad. You know, they obviously added Cam Newton, a player I love. But once again, Cam has no weapons to play with.
Yeah.
Like, welcome back to Carolina, Cam. You know, you look at this team. Van Noy's left Jamie Collins, so their linebackering core is not the same as last year. You have a couple players like Patrick Chung, you know, opting out of the season, as well as Dante Hightower. So obviously it's Bill Belichick. He'll do great on defense somehow, but this team looks totally different. Let's see what Cam can do. You know, I'm just hoping he has a great season and can sign a long-term contract somewhere next year. But I think this team will still somehow be a pretty decent team. Looking at it on paper, I don't think they should be, but it's Bill Belichick, so I'll trust him. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so looking at the team, you get so excited, right? You see Cam Newton's on the team. You know, I get so excited. That's the most exciting part of this whole division to me is how good will Cam Newton be? And then you forget, oh yeah, there's a reason Tom Brady left this team. There's a reason why he didn't want to stay, right? The Patriots wanted him back. You know, say what you will about where we think his arm might be. The Patriots obviously wanted him back. And he's like, nah, I need some weapons. So I have to like slow my roll on like how excited I get about Cam Newton being here, especially because he's been looking good in what we've heard and seen from training camp. So
Yeah, I mean, look, I think that we learned everything that we need to know about this team when multiple players opted out, right?
Yeah.
Like this is a tanking ass roster, and again, like they're gonna be well coached. But like you look across that defense, for example, man, like they're just not special at so many positions, and that's obviously rare from a Bill Belichick coach team. You know, they should still be very good in the secondary, obviously, but that's kind of the one place where you're like, this is an elite team here. Linebacker, they're okay. Defensive line, they're kind of eh. And like you mentioned, I mean, I think that N'Keal Harry's gonna have a bit of a breakout year for the Patriots this year, but I mean, like, you look at that depth chart, right? Like, who's Demary Bird, right? Like, who's Matthew Slater? Who are these people, right? And these are the sort of guys that Cam Newton's gonna have to rely on to look like an NFL player. Like, I'm just a little worried that Cam and even Sony Michel are about to get thrown to the wolves, and I don't know. I hope that that's wrong because I'm a big Cam Newton fan, but I think that this is very much a, well, let's see what we have season.
Yeah, N'Keal Harry is a player I do think. Obviously, he was injured last year, so we didn't get to see him when he is at his best. I think he can be a number one receiver in the NFL, and we may see it this year. But it's going to be way harder without good number twos and threes next to you because he's going to see a lot of double teams.
Yeah, that's for sure. Obviously, they still have Edelman, but yeah, we need to see N'Keal Harry for like any chance of Cam, right? Like Cam needs N'Keal Harry to step up. We didn't see Damien Harris last year. Let's see if he's a good running back to add to the group. But I think they'll heavily rely on Michelle, Harris, and James White. Just kind of the standard Patriots procedure, just using all your running backs. But let's see what they can do. Going to the last team, it's the Buffalo Bills. And I really love this team. I mean, who they added Stephon Diggs, another amazing weapon, and they've done really good things for Josh Allen. They also drafted Zach Moss, who was like a top 5, top 6 running back in this draft class. They have Devin Singletary. They have Cole Beasley, they have John Brown. So they have the weapons there. It's more like, can Josh Allen, take that next step and be a little bit more accurate? He obviously has the arm, so maybe he just chunks the ball all the way down and is like, Diggs, go get it. Maybe that'll work for him. But let's see if he can take that next step. And if he does, I think this team's going to be really damn good because their defense is solid as hell. If you just look at it, they obviously did lose Shaq Lawson, as I mentioned earlier, but just overall, the secondary is pretty good, linebackers are pretty great, and the defensive line is pretty nice as well. So I'm definitely looking forward to this team. I think it'll be a fun team. Just hoping Josh Allen takes that next step.
Yeah, I can answer that question for you right here, right now. I've looked into the future. Josh Allen does not become more accurate, but even though I don't expect him to become a lot more accurate and much more consistent as a player, yeah, I mean, this team is obviously so good around him that they're still going to be a solid team. Like you mentioned, defensively, they just have so many good guys across the field, right? They've got Tre'Davious White, who they just signed to a giant cornerback contract. They've got Ed Oliver, who's still coming up, obviously. Like, this is a really good defense that, you mentioned is kind of strong everywhere on the field, but especially on the front and back ends. Offensively, yeah. Look, if this team is a good team, it's going to be because between Josh Allen, Zach Moss, and Devin Singletary, they run the ball well, right? They're not going to be a team that's going to attack you in space. It's not going to be a team that, is throwing into windows, because that's not something that Josh Allen has the ability to do and probably will never have the ability to do. But, we saw last year some of the vision, and in some ways that can be good enough to be competitive. And look, I look at the 4 teams in this division, right? Like, this is probably the most talented team in a lot of ways, but yeah, I mean, I just can't take them seriously as like a legit contender if their quarterback's completing 58% of their passes.
Yeah, so I completely agree. I don't expect Josh Allen to get much better, but I don't think it matters, honestly. I think Josh Allen, who he is as a quarterback, is good enough for now to get this team into the playoffs and get them looking good. I don't expect them to be a real Super Bowl contender, but this is a playoff team.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we just talked about the other 3 teams in this division, right? And I mean, we can just go ahead and jump right to, sort of division talk, right? But like, you looked at the other piece in that division, like, honestly, like, the Dolphins could definitely have some upside, but like, which of these teams right now expects to win more than 8 games, even potentially, right? like this is one of the worst divisions in football, and like, around Josh Allen, that team's really good. I think that Stephon Diggs is going to add dimension to their passing game that they can use, once every 4 throws down the field, obviously. But yeah, I mean, I do think that there's a lot of talent on this team. I think that they have proven that they're a well-coached team. Look, if Josh Allen goes out and completes 63% of his passes, then they can win a Super Bowl. Since he's going to complete 58% of his passes, they can make the playoffs.
Yeah, so you mentioned Josh Allen, and him being inconsistent. Same can be said for Stephon Diggs. So I'm just hoping they're consistent together, at the right times, and I think good things could happen. But let's rank them. For me, I have the New York Jets winning 5 games. I have them going 5-11. I have the New England Patriots going 7-9. Then I have the Miami Dolphins also going 7-9, and I think the Bills win the division going 9-7.
Yeah, that's about where I'm at too. I think that the Dolphins definitely have some upside, but I don't necessarily know if we'll see it all next year. And like you said, I mean, the Bills are going to make the playoffs, they're going to win the division, and they're going to win. They could go 8-8 too, and potentially win the division, right? But I think that 8-8 is very much good enough to win this division.
Yeah, so I think I have a little bit more faith in these teams than you because they are playing the Denver division, right? However, they are also playing, the Seahawks division, which is absolutely stacked. So I expect this. Yeah, I expect there to be 8 losses from that alone. But I do have the Dolphins going 8-8. I have the Patriots going 8-8. I have the Buffalo Bills going 9-7 to win the division, and then I have 6-10 for the New York Jets, which is, I guess, a little bit more faith.
Yeah, one more win for the bottom 3 teams. Yeah.
No, one more win each is 3 extra wins for the division, though.
That's true. But I think we're pretty set on how this division is gonna come out. But let's move on to the next one. Well, let's talk about the Denver division you mentioned. Let's go to the AFC West. Take it away, Dev.
Awesome. So we're gonna start this division off with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think it's the best place to start. Look, this is an amazing team. I expect them to be amazing. I expect them to be a number 1 or 2 seed, and this is a year where getting the number 1 seed is really, really important. I don't think they're going to do it. I think they're going to be the number 2 seed, but obviously it doesn't matter. Patrick Mahomes is the kind of person, it doesn't really matter where he's playing. You can win a playoff game. You're not worried. You can be down 24-0 and win a playoff game.
Right. No, I think, not much has changed with this team. I think their offensive line is a little banged up, and they had a couple of players opt out. But overall, only thing that's changed is they brought in Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and I think that's going to be fucking fantastic. I'm looking forward to see what he can do. I think he's an upgrade over Damian Williams. But, defense, offense, most of it stayed the same. So I think it's going to be the high-powered offense we always see, and I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I don't really have anything else to add.
Yeah, that's why
Patrick Mahomes.
It's a good place to start, and we'll go to the other C team in the division. We're going to go to the Chargers. So to me, the Chargers are a really, really interesting team. Look, they've got one of the 2 Bosas, so you expect the defense to be good, right? And especially he's charged up, he's getting paid, he's ready to play. And I think that the Chargers have historically always had pretty good rosters. And I still think this roster is pretty good. It's just, and this is the most weapons Tyrod will have ever had, but is Tyrod Taylor really going to be able to get you in playoff contention? That's the real question with this roster to me. And I'm not sure the answer. Obviously, if he doesn't, they have a backup plan, or their future already planned. And maybe if it's not going well, look at Herbert and it'll go even worse. But
yeah, for sure. I think you saw it last year. They were pretty adamant about not paying Rivers, not paying Melvin Gordon. So now we're going to Eckler. They obviously paid Keenan Allen. They paid Bosa, as you mentioned. They guaranteed Melvin Ingram's money. This team looks fantastic on defense, as they usually always do. I feel bad that Derwin James got injured and is going to miss the season. Otherwise, I think that defense is pretty stout. Like you mentioned, Tyrod Taylor, I love him as a guy, as a player. I think he's fantastic. Thing is, he can't really throw down the field that great. I think he can escape the pocket pretty well. But he has some weapons. He's Keenan there. He has Hunter Henry there. Mike Williams is already banged up. So it's mostly I really don't know what's going to happen to this team. The defense is really solid. Offense is kind of a question mark to me.
Yeah, I mean, this is a classic Chargers team, right? Like they're perfectly okay everywhere. Like they don't have any big weaknesses, they don't have any massive strengths necessarily. And look, I mean, one thing that we have to take into account, there will be an election day, and like you mentioned, there's a Bosa in the defensive meeting room. How is that going to play for the stretch run?
Uh, I didn't
Bosa's
get
a
the
big Trump
joke.
guy.
Oh, is he?
Yeah,
Okay,
like a huge
I had
Trump
no
guy.
clue.
Well, that fell flat.
It's funny knowing the context, but I just didn't know he was.
Yeah, and on top of that, actually, the kind of funny thing is that that their running back Justin Jackson is a huge Bernie guy too. So like,
Oh,
yeah, like a hugely vocal Bernie guy too.
that's.
Let us know if you got that. Yeah,
Oh,
no,
man.
interesting.
Yeah, obviously they have a defensive player of the year candidate on this roster, and if their defense can be that good, I think Tyrod may be able to win you some games, 17-14, right? If you can hold some teams down low, Tyrod might be able to win you some games.
Yeah, they're just going to be right there in the middle of sort of that competitive streak. You know, they're going to be potentially in contention for a wild card, but that's one of the tough things about this division, obviously, is you're playing for second.
Yeah.
Yeah, and as we talked about, Tyrod Taylor, I think having Austin Eckler back there will really help him out. In case he's running out, doesn't have much time, he can always throw it out to Eckler, who's one of the best pass catching running backs. And hopefully Hunter Henry can stay healthy for him. I think that'll be another like safety pocket for him. But let's definitely see what happens. I think they have a new stadium, they have new jerseys, so at least they have something to look forward to.
Yeah, well, they couldn't have had a worse stadium.
Yeah, maybe in 2021 they'll get fans.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
true. That is not something we talked about. But if there's any team that benefits from not having fans around, it's the Chargers. They had no home field anyway.
Yeah, I honestly, I'm sorry, I just cannot get excited about this team. There's nothing to me that I look at and I'm like, man, I cannot wait to watch that. Like I'm just not interested. That's what it comes down to for the Chargers.
Don't blame me one bit. Let's move along to the next team, Dev.
Yeah, so the next team we're going to talk about is the Raiders. I do think when you talk about a team that's actually exciting, they may be worse than the Chargers, but they're definitely going to be more exciting. There's way more to watch on this team. You got what's happening with Derek Carr. You have did he win Rookie of the Year or not?
No, he did not, and
Oh.
Gruden's pissed off about it.
Yeah, but you have someone who should have won Rookie of the Year or was a candidate for it in Josh Jacobs, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with names, but yeah, I think this is like a really fun, exciting team. They were pretty decent on both ends last year. The question is, yeah, obviously, is Derek Carr going to really be Derek Carr that we saw for glimpses a few years ago or not? And I think the answer is probably not, but at least there's some excitement here, and it's fun to watch. Gruden is one of the best shows as a person, right? His personality is a TV show. So
I think you hit it on the spot. Like I said, he was super upset that Josh Jacobs didn't win Rookie of the Year, and he said he's going to improve it like this year. So I feel like Josh Jacobs is going to go wild out here. Definitely catch more passes than he did in the past, in last year. But like you mentioned, whole new team really with the offensive weapons. They brought in Ruggs. He'll be fun to watch. Brian Edwards, another weapon for him. Let's see if he can kind of replicate that thing a couple years ago with Amari Cooper and Michael Crabtree, right? Like we saw Carr, we've seen him be good, right? And we kind of need him to be that because otherwise, right now Mariota's injured, so his backup's Nathan Peterman. You don't want that.
the best quarterback ever, Nathan Peterman.
And the other thing is, they still have 2 more years of Derek Carr, right? They're paying him $20 million per year, and I think that totally sucks. But let's see what happens there. They brought in Jason Witten, great vocal leader. I don't think he's going to do much, but they have Darren Waller there as well, who exploded off the scene last year. So I think they have enough weapons. On defense, they also have like Malik Collins they brought in from the Cowboys, but some nice pieces here and there. But I think it'll be a very fun team to watch just because putting all these pieces together will be something for sure.
Yeah. Look, let's just go ahead and jump in and remember that like Josh Jacobs lost Rookie of the Year because of Kyler Murray. Like, we don't have to act like, he didn't lose to Michael Carter Williams or something, right? Like, he lost to, a legit franchise quarterback. So, good for him for getting motivated, but like, we don't have to pretend that he was like robbed or something like that. But I do really like this team. I think that basically their whole stable of receivers is new, like you mentioned with Henry Ruggs and Bryan Edwards. I think those are two good players who are gonna, be big time players for them. I don't know if I look at this roster and think like, man, the thing they really needed was a burner, right? Like, I would not have picked Ruggs first. They're probably, I don't even know how many receivers. It's 4, 5, 6 receivers who I probably would have picked if I was the Raiders over them, because they need some safety blankets too. And I don't know whether Derek Carr is going to be the guy launching the ball down the field necessarily, but defensive line, I really like what they've got there in Max Crosby and Cleveland Farrell. So I mean, they have some guys, right? They have some players. Like you said, I think that they could be a lot of fun. Josh Jacobs, a legit, sort of all-pro candidate. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, like you mentioned, this probably isn't going to be a team that's necessarily competing, but they, they could surprise, I think.
For sure. And, we've talked about this before. Gruden loves the speed. That's why he went with the Ruggs. They drafted Lynn Bowden as well, traded his ass because, why? He wasn't too fast at running back, and that's why they traded him. That's literally why they traded him away. I think no matter what, it'll be a fun team to watch on offense for sure and see how it works out.
All right. So the last team in the division here, we've got the Denver Broncos. So this is one of those really interesting teams because you're coming into the second year on a quarterback, just like you saw with something like the Cleveland Browns last year, where it's so exciting. You're coming into the second year and you don't know what's going to happen. The Denver Broncos fully expect a step up from Drew Lock. But is it going to happen? I know Shahan and I are probably in the no camp. There are certainly people in the yes camp, but it's going to be interesting to watch.
For sure. I think when you look at the team, the defense is kind of getting old. So really, they surrounded their quarterback with tons of weapons. You've got Noah Fant, you've got Jerry Jeudy, you've got KJ Hamler, Cortland Sutton, obviously. And they brought in Melvin Gordon, right? And they also have Philip Lindsay. So Locke has everything that he needs. I don't know if I trust him or not, but like if he can get together, this team will be so fun to watch on offense for sure. And I think they have the pieces on defense to actually be like decent. I don't think they're that spectacular Broncos defense we're used to, but I'm looking forward to this offense. I'm hoping Locke can at least be good. Maybe not the greatness Elway's expecting, but he has amazing weapons all around him. So I'm hoping he puts it together.
Yeah, and let's not forget that they still have a Defensive Player of the Year candidate on this team, right? This defense could still be special.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I think that, defensively and defense them a little, like, they are a good team, right? Like, in that front seven, you've got multiple pass rushers who are going to get after, right? Bradley Chubb is still coming along. Obviously, like you mentioned, you've got Von Miller. Like, they've got big-time players. They've got guys who can make quarterbacks uncomfortable. And on the back end, they do have some guys like A.J. Bouye who are good, right? Not necessarily game changers, but really good. And then on offense, look, here's the thing. This is kind of, in some ways, like what's happening with Josh Allen in Buffalo, right? Where it's just like, you have so much talent there. Like, if you're not going to succeed, then we just need to throw you out of the NFL, right? Like, then you just aren't an NFL player. And I think that Locke showed us a lot during his first season. But I mean, again, the good news is, like, he's going to get to throw the ball to Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton and KJ Hamler and Noah Fant, right? Like, one of the best stables of receivers in the NFL, in my opinion. Like, I think that this could be a really special group, and they're young. So maybe they're a year or two away from being, like, elite, but holy crap, this group. And then, adding Melvin Gordon to go with Philip Lindsay, like, are you kidding me? That's ridiculous. If this isn't one of the top offenses in the NFL, then one, again, Drew Lock should be thrown out of the NFL, and two, then like they really need to rethink a whole lot of what they're doing. I do wish that they had another quarterback on the roster that wasn't Jeff Driscoll. That maybe they could, just as a safety blanket, because this is a team, in my opinion, that should be contending for the playoffs, especially with how old that defense is getting. Like this should be a year that you're trying to make a run, but look, I mean, I think that Locke is good enough to make this work to at least some extent.
So like you mentioned, in case Drew Lock doesn't figure it out, the team's young enough on offense where you could just plug in, like bring in a vet or do something. So I'm excited for the future of the team on offense for sure. But like I said, I hope they're competitive this year.
Yeah, it's really going to be unfortunate if Locke can't kind of figure things out, right? Because even this is a team that, like, man, if you bring Tyrod Taylor in there, right, like that's enough, right? Like that's enough where you feel okay about what you got going on. Like I just need to. I hope that Drew Lock is consistent. And I mean, we saw what he could do at the college level. And I mean, look, his first season, it was limited touches, it was limited throws. He completed 64% of his passes. If he can be over 60, right, he doesn't need to be close to 70. If he can be over 60 with this group, I mean, this could be potentially a special team.
For sure. What are your record predictions and rankings, Dev?
Yeah, so we're gonna start off in last place in the division. I actually have the Chargers at 7-9, which is pretty good for a last place team considering we're in the AFC. But I then have the Raiders going 8-8, which I think might be overhyping them a little bit, but we'll see. And then I have the Denver Broncos going 9-7 and having a chance at the playoffs. And I have the Kansas City Chiefs going 12-4.
All right, for me, I basically have those same records. I do have the Chiefs going 13-3, but I just flip those last two. I think that the Raiders will finish 7-9, and the Chargers will finish a completely forgettable, very easy to ignore 8-8. And then, like you said, Denver finishing second. I think that they probably will make the playoffs. I mean, obviously, we'll do those picks later. But they're going to be right there, I think. And then the Chiefs, again, just run the hell out of everybody.
For sure. So Chiefs, I have number 1, 12-4. Yeah, 2 through 4 really could go either way. So what I wrote down was I had Denver going 8-8. I had the Chargers going 8-8, and I had the Raiders, Viva Las Vegas, going 7-9. So I think that race between 2 and 4 is going to be pretty tight. Like I said, if Taylor can be something, that defense is pretty amazing and could probably help them get some wins. But let's see what happens. Let's go to the last division, maybe the most fun. Maybe it's the AFC North. Obviously, we've got the Ravens, the Steelers, we've got Bengals, and the Browns. So let's start out with the Bengals. So
man, real quick, man, going through all these AFC teams, there are a lot of teams that don't matter, man. There are so many teams in the AFC that just are like, who cares? Not necessarily in this division, right? Like I think that there's
this division is 4 teams I care about, but this is the only division.
Right. Like, I mean, we just went through all of those. I'm like, I mean, I like a lot of Denver players, but otherwise, like the Chiefs, and I don't give a shit. Like, man, there are a lot of teams in the AFC that are just like, I mean, they could go 7-9, I guess.
I'm right there with you, Shahan. But let's see. I think there's a lot of like rebuilding teams, so maybe in the future they'll be interesting to watch. But
that's the thing, though, is that some of these teams aren't even rebuilding; they're just kind of there, right?
Yeah,
like,
which is the worst possible thing you could be,
right? Yeah. Like, what are the Chargers doing, right? Like now the Chargers at least have like their quarterback, hopefully, coming in, and Justin Herbert. But like otherwise, it's still just like, all right. I mean, do you want to be good now or later? Because you're kind of doing neither.
That's totally true. Let's get this started. We'll go with the Bengals. Obviously, they drafted Joe Burrow, the savior for the team. They obviously lost Andy Dalton in the same sentence. This team, I think, when you talk about one of the most like offensive teams to watch, like one of the most exciting to watch, this team can probably get there probably in the second half, I think. You've got Joe Burrow, you've got T. Higgins, you have A.J. Green, you have John Ross. You obviously have Joe Mixon in the backfield. You've just got all those weapons that a quarterback needs. Tyler Boyd. I knew I was forgetting one. I was just like, I'll skip over and go to running backs. But yeah, Tyler Boyd as well. And I think this is another defense that is kind of like aging. You've obviously still got like Geno Atkins there, and those names. But I'm excited to see what this team does. Probably not this year. Probably in 1 or 2 years, I think it'll be a very fun team to watch and probably contending for a playoff spot. But I think this year is trying to figure out, get Joe Burrow settled there. I kind of want to see if they hold on to AJ Green or maybe they trade him away to like a playoff contender. But I think that wraps it up for the Bengals for me.
Yeah. So I don't always like go specifically through the schedule and when they're playing teams, but the Bengals are playing a very, very tough first and back half of their schedule. That like middle portion is the only like life in their schedule. Like I feel bad because this team is exciting. They have a lot of young talent, they got a really hard schedule. And they just start off with the Chargers. The Chargers will be their best in week 1. We know that, right? Like the Chargers, they're always getting injured. Week 1 is when you don't want to play the Chargers, right? And then they've got the Browns, the Eagles. And so when they get into the middle of their schedule, then they have Washington, New York, and Miami, those 3 games in a row. But then they finish it off, Pittsburgh, Houston, Baltimore. Maybe Baltimore's resting everyone, but considering the division they're in, they may not be resting everyone. And considering how important the 1 seed is this year, I expect Baltimore may be playing Week 17. This is a brutal schedule. And I feel bad because I do think this is an exciting team that could be better than expected, but still have a terrible record.
Yeah, and look, that's the thing, right? Is like this is how a team is supposed to be bad, right? You draft Joe Burrow and you're gonna say, let's figure it out. And I look at that team, you mentioned it, right? They have so many weapons at receiver, they have so many weapons at running back. Defensively, there's still a little bit of a work in progress. It's probably, look, when they get a top 5 pick next year, they're gonna draft a pass rusher, right? Like that's gonna be the move. And that's fine, right? It's totally fine. And so, but I think that they're gonna be so much more fun a team than they were a year ago. They're gonna be a team that's watchable. They're gonna be, kind of like what the Cardinals were last year, right? Where it's just like, it's Kyler going around and throwing the ball to all these cool weapons, and they were still figuring out how to be good, but I think that you can feel pretty optimistic about their situation, and they're probably going to finish 4th, obviously, but who cares?
Yeah, like when we talk about rebuilding teams, like the Jaguars still have questions, right, in their quarterback. This team on offense, I think they have it for the future. They're set. Like you mentioned, they just need to rework that defense, but no one's expecting any amazing things or like them to make the playoffs this year. But I think they're heading in the right direction. In the future, they'll definitely be fun to watch.
Right. This was an 0-16 contending team last year. Like, just to put it back in perspective, right? Like, right.
Which, by the way,
if they can win 4 games, this is a successful year.
Yeah. Which, by the way, that's kind of crazy to me that they went out and won, so few games. Because, like, again, I do look at this roster. I'm like, it's not that bad, right? Like, it's not. It doesn't feel like it's like a 1-win team sort of bad, right? It feels like a 5-11 sort of team, but like. Yeah, I mean, obviously they just didn't play well. They had injuries, and things happen, I guess. But at the same time,
for Tua started going.
Right, and no, I mean that is sort of the thing. I think that in a lot of ways they were one of the unluckier teams last year in terms of during the season, and that put them in a fantastic position where they get to go draft, the son of Ohio, Joe Burrow.
Totally true. Let's go to the other Ohio team right now. Let's talk about the Cleveland Browns. Today, the Odell news came out, so Browns just sounds wrong. But yeah, you look at this team. They made some great additions. This is a team that's built for now. I think they have 1, maybe 2 years, but after that, if it's not working out, you have to blow that team apart. They signed Adrian Claiborne. Cowboys fans know that guy can just sack the shit out of your quarterback. What he did with Atlanta Falcons 3 years ago, and they signed Andrew Billings. He unfortunately opted out, but they added Austin Hooper. They still have David Njoku there, Odell, Landry. You got the weapons. They improved their O-line. They obviously got Jack Conklin from the Titans. Let's see what they can do. I think they have their defense is pretty great. They unfortunately had 2 major injuries in their secondary, but I think overall this team should be good. Let's just see if Odell can bounce back from last year and if Baker, improves. I think, last year that line didn't help him at all. So, let's see what they can do. Obviously, I mentioned the passing game. They have Chubb there. They have Kareem Hunt there. Like 2 of the top, 30 running backs in the league. I think they should do great things.
Yeah, so I am really, really excited about this team. I think that you're looking at, hopefully you can see rookie Baker, right? If you can just get rookie of the year Baker Mayfield, or rookie of the year candidate, because I think Saquon won, but a candidate of best rookie, a good quarterback, along with the best, arguably one of the best running backs in the league, and you arguably have the best defensive player in the league as well. I think that if I was going to pick one person for defensive player of the year this year, Myles Garrett would be my bet. And I think that this is a year where you're looking at a refocusing, you're looking at new head coach, and I expect them to come out swinging.
Yeah, honestly, I kind of disagree with what you said there, Ashish. Like, I don't think that this is a team though that needs to win right this very second or blow everything up, right? Because this team is still pretty young. Like, I know that because they've kind of been together for a couple of years, and especially because they disappointed last year. Like, I understand like that can't happen again, right? Like, you can't have that bizarrety happen last year again. But when I look at this team, I mean, they are solid everywhere. And you mentioned their issues on the offensive line. They brought in two of the best guys to help fix that in Jack Conklin and Jedrick Wills, right? Like, these are legit sort of top end offensive tackles who they didn't have last year. And look, I mean, everything's there, right? It's sort of like we were talking about with Drew Lock, right? Everything's there. And obviously I'm more optimistic as a player about Baker Mayfield than Drew Lock, but like, Baker's not going to be running for his life. Like, that's not going to happen this year. Baker has the weapons. We have to see, obviously, whether Odell can get his head out of. I'm not going to say head out of his ass because apparently that we can't do that no more. But but then defensively, like you mentioned, I mean, Myles Garrett's an elite pass rusher. They've got Olivier Vernon. They've got they've got so many good players across that roster. Denzel Ward's another guy who's growing up. Like, they just have so much, and I've honestly forgotten who's the coach now that they brought in.
That's a great question.
I'll look it up. We'll give him a sec.
But I mean, look,
Kevin Stefanski.
Okay, yeah, Stefanski, right? The Vikings offensive coordinator, right? Yep. So I mean, you're talking about having potentially more of a real coaching staff, as opposed to kind of letting a fan who won a contest be the head coach of an NFL football team. So I mean, I really no shade, obviously, but like I do think that it's going to make a big difference to kind of have a more focused and professional coaching staff, somebody who's maybe more ready to be a head coach, and I do think that this is a team that dramatically underperformed last year. And I see this as a team that could be one of the NFL's most improved teams in 2020.
Yeah, you guys bring up good points. Maybe I misspoke and said they to blow it up, but I think they do have to retool, right? Like in 2 years, Landry, Odell, we don't know what they're going to be at that point, right? Like a couple injuries for Odell, that could end his career. Landry's getting up there in age, right? So I think you're definitely right. They definitely have Chubb there. They have Baker Mayfield. They have some really good young key pieces. I just think right now they're set up with like nice vets and some young players. Like it's a perfect mixture to, if they can get together, they can do good things.
Yeah, and I do kind of get what you're saying, because like if this team goes like 6-10, 5-11, like Baker's out, right? I think that like this team, and I don't think that's what's going to happen. I think this team is going to do well, but if they don't, I could see them blowing it up.
Right, like I said, they have invested so much on the offense and on defense. Like in the draft, obviously we've talked about some of the players. They had Delpit. Unfortunately, he's going to miss this season. Greedy Williams is there. He's a little banged up, but like you look at the D line, you look at the linebackers. They invested so much in this team. I think their opportunity is kind of like right now. Otherwise, they're just going to have to retool. Maybe not have to blow up.
Maybe or they may have to just go into the quarterback market.
Let's see what happens. Let's move on towards the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, this team still went 8-8 last year, and they started like Duck Hodges and a couple of games and Mason Rudolph. Big Ben is back. I think that's a big question, though. He's pretty up there in age. I don't know what he has left, but this team looks really good. Their defense was like number 1 or number 2 overall last year. Not really like a bunch of names. Obviously, you have TJ Watt there, but overall, this defense comes together and plays pretty well. They have Deontay Johnson there. They have Juju Smith-Schuster on his last year. I think the big question here is, what does Big Ben have left, and who's going to be the number 2 receiving option? Obviously, we have Juju there. Deontay Johnson is an option. James Washington. They drafted Chase Claypool, and they brought in Eric Ebron as well. So, I mean, he has the weapons there. And I think it's just a thing we have to see if they can actually put it together or not. But I think this team's set up for like the winning now. Like the defense set up. Let's see if Big Ben can pull it together.
Yeah, like you said, Big Ben is back, but Steelers fans will be happy to know Duck Hodges is back. He's signed to the practice squad.
I mean, more than that, they brought back Josh Dobbs, someone I liked. I think Sean may have interviewed him as well at some point, but
back in the day, when he was at Tennessee.
Right, but I do remember that. But so they did bring some decent names there. I'm glad Duck Hodges is on the practice squad. Thanks, Deb.
Yeah, I just, I mean, look, I'm sure Ben will have a perfectly okay year, but like that is not, heading into 2021 and beyond what you want your quarterback situation to be, right? Like they probably will next year draft a quarterback, I'd imagine, because Rudolph's not the guy. Josh Dobbs is one of the smartest people that you'll meet and is not an NFL quarterback. Like, I mean, it's just this isn't real, right? Like this isn't realistic. So like you said, this kind of does have to be a last hurrah for them with Big Ben. And look, there's ways to acquire quarterbacks, but this is not a long-term option for them. You mentioned I really like Juju Smith-Schuster. That defense obviously is going to be really good, but if there's a team that I think could maybe disappoint compared to last year, or maybe disappoint compared to what you would expect from them, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if it was the Steelers because I just don't know how much Ben has left in the tank.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, Big Ben had a pretty serious shoulder injury. So, I mean, let's see if he can stay healthy the whole season. But I think it'll be a fun team to watch if he can be, somewhat decent. Obviously better than Mason Rudolph and Josh Dobbs and Duck Hodges. But that's a good question. Like, we need to see what the future holds for them. But it is like the last chance for them. But I think they'll do pretty good. They have the weapons for Big Ben there, and their defense is pretty great.
Despite having terrible quarterback play the whole year, they still went 7-9.
Yeah.
Like, this is a talented roster.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just one of those teams. It's just like, I don't know where you guys are trying to go with this, right? Because, like, obviously they're not good enough to be a Super Bowl contender, so. Yeah. But, keep playing your guys as long as you can, keep winning as long as you can, and then figure out the rest later.
For sure. All right, let's go to the most fun team. Let's go to the Baltimore Ravens. I mean, holy shit. All right, they went... I think they're going to be great. Obviously, they kept most of their parts. Somehow they got better. They drafted Patrick Queen. They got J.K. Dobbins in there. They drafted Madubuike as well. They added Derek Wolfe, who was really good with the Broncos a couple years ago. Calais Campbell, some like long-term, like big vets. They can still have a punch in them. And they added a pair of rookie wide receivers for Lamar Jackson as well. But, the only subtraction from this team is what? Earl Thomas, a couple weeks ago. But I think this defense is like one of the best. Like, I don't know how they got so much better just in 1 year. They didn't even need to get better. I feel like they should donate these draft picks to like the Bengals and whatnot because this team's already so good. I think they got better. This team's gonna like dominate this year.
Right. To me, this is the best roster in the NFL. When I just look top to bottom, this team is stacked everywhere. They are stacked, and I am so excited to see what they're like. And I do think they're going to be hungry, right? They lost their first playoff game. They didn't even get a playoff win last year, and to the Titans of all teams, right? They're going to want to be back. I think that they're going to win the head-to-head with Kansas City this year. And I don't know. I think this is an exciting team.
Yeah, I think that the one thing that I'll say is that there might not be obviously a race to 14-2 like there was last year because, they're going to try to win the division, try to see if they can lock up the 1 seed. But, they know that they have bigger fish to fry if they, are going to try to figure out how to be a better playoff team, obviously. Really the only thing I have to add is James Prochet, my receiver who was just drafted from SMU, already impressing in camp. He's one of the best receivers that I've ever seen play. Completely overlooked a 6th-round pick. Trust me, you need to know his name.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to that. Obviously we saw last year, they don't even need to pass that much, but they have Mark Andrews there. They have Hollywood Brown, like you mentioned, a couple, like I said, rookie wide receivers they added. They have the weapons if they need it. Lamar Jackson, I think, is going to be spectacular. I'm looking forward to see what he can do. And like I said, Ingram was good last year. They brought another weapon, and they have probably 3 or 4 good running backs on that team. So let's see what they do. But let's rank this division real quick.
Well, speaking of Hollywood Brown really quick, this is actually a healthy offseason for him. Last year he was hurt in the offseason, and that is a huge negative, especially as a rookie. I definitely expect Hollywood Brown to play even better this year than he did for flashes last year.
Yeah, and I would hope that one of the things that the coaching staff tries to do is I hope that they do try to get Lamar Jackson a few more snaps, kind of being more of a pocket passer. Not because I think that he needs to be, right. Like, I think that obviously we've seen he can be the MVP of the league while doing it, but just to try to develop that part of his game a little more. Because, I mean, look, I think that trying to draw, these vast realizations off of one playoff loss is obviously silly, but like, the more versatile he can be, the more versatile that offense can be, the better they're going to be. So I would like to see, again, if a James Prochet comes in, he's a guy who catches everything, right? Mark Andrews showed he catches everything, and Hollywood Brown is sort of that breakaway option. They've got a lot of guys there, and if they can develop that part of their game, they can go from being, really, 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 really good to being legitimately unstoppable, even when game planned against.
For sure, definitely looking up for the matchup against the Steelers, against the Chiefs. They played the Cowboys as well. Like you mentioned, Hollywood Brown actually added like 10, 15 pounds of muscle this offseason as well. Yeah. So I think he's playing like pretty lightweight last year as well. So let's see what they can do. They have the weapons. Defense, as you mentioned, so much depth. So let's go ahead and predict and rank. So I'll go first. I got the Bengals winning 4 games, losing 12. Potentially they could win 5. Like you mentioned, they have a hard schedule, but no one's expecting anything out of them. I've got Cleveland going 8-8. They could potentially put it together, maybe win 9 or 10 games, but that's how I feel about them right now. Steelers, I have a little hope. I think their defense is really great. Big Ben has the weapons. I think they go 10-6. And I've got the Baltimore Ravens going 13-3 this year.
All right, so I'll start down with the Bengals. I also have them with 4 wins. I think 4 wins is a good year for them, and I don't want Bengals fans to get like too crazy with expectations on the team. I actually have the Steelers 3rd in the division, but they're also 9-7, and I have the Browns going 9-7 as well, but the Browns are going to make the playoffs. And then I have the Baltimore Ravens getting the 1 seed at 12-4, but just with the head-to-head over Kansas City.
So I got Baltimore at 13-3. I mean, again, I think they're just so much better than the rest of the division. I just don't even know. Like, I mean, obviously they're not going to win all 6, right? But like, they're going to come close, right? Like, they're going to go 5-1 or something like that. Number 2, I also have the Cleveland Browns. Look, I think that this is just a team that was in a very bad position last year, that made some mistakes last year. I think they're going to win 10 games. I think they're going to go 10-6. In 3rd, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers. Again, I just don't know what to expect from them. Like you said, I mean, even when Big Ben's healthy, he's hurt, right? Like, that's just where we're at with him at this point. And the defense is really good, but like, it's not good enough to carry the whole team, in my opinion. And then in 4th, obviously, I've got the Bengals at about 4 wins. So I think that Baltimore's just not even head and shoulders. They're like head, shoulders, and chest above everybody else. And then I think that the Browns are just. I think that they're going to be notably better than last year, whereas I don't know whether the Steelers will be.
Yeah, with the Steelers, too, with Big Ben, he's coming off an injury. He's basically had a one long offseason. And if there's one thing we know about Big Ben, it is that he does not keep himself the best shape in the offseason, right? So I don't know what happened this year. He's looked pretty decent, but, like, look, Big Ben may not be in shape for the first few games this year.
He definitely ate some Travis Scott meals from McDonald's today, that's for sure. But yeah, I think I just have a little hope because Tomlin does work it out. But yeah, it'd be understandable if the Browns did end up like 2nd in this division for sure. You mentioned the Baltimore Ravens, head, shoulders, knees, and toes above the rest of the division for sure. I think that wraps it up. We will do a playoff prediction and Super Bowl picks as well. But that wraps up the AFC. We're looking forward to the games. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, see ya.